is up, guys? Welcome back to the Refounder Show. My name is Kai Hood, and this is where we are refounding the next generations. If you're new to the show, we talk about faith, family, fitness, and entrepreneurship of the next generations, and I am super fired up because I believe that today's topic is the most important thing for the next generations right now. And in fact, somebody was just interviewing me on their podcast, and they asked me, well, Kai, what do you think is the current biggest issue for the next generations, young men, young women? And I couldn't really answer that question. It took me a minute, and I realized it was leadership. There's a massive lack of leadership, and I couldn't think of anybody better to do this podcast with than one of my closest friends, Isaac Prince.
Glad to be here, Kai.
Dude,
it's been a while, man.
So much love for you, brother, and it's an honor to have you on the show. And
Glad to be here.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that don't know who Isaac Prince is, Isaac is an amazing young leader, 20 years old. We're basically the same age, and I actually met Isaac at a leadership event about almost 3 years ago. It was a John Maxwell event, and we're going to be talking about John Maxwell during this podcast. Just for those of you that don't know who he is, he's the #1 leadership coach and author in the world, correct? And we were at an event, and it was very private, which was cool. We were the youngest people there. We just connected. And what's crazy is this is now the second time we've actually been in person with each other. It was only that time and then now.
Yeah.
And during that time until now, those 3 years, before that I had no relationship with God, and I had not a lot of direction. It was more just about business. And you went off to serve a mission for, what you were doing in the church there. And both of our lives just drastically changed. But you were one of the first friends of mine that held me accountable, that poured into me. And honestly, Isaac, if it weren't for you to planting those seeds early on, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I just have so much love and appreciation for your brotherhood, your friendship, and your leadership as a friend, and just everything, man. I'm very grateful.
Love you, dude. Thanks so much for that. I love this quote. So in the church I'm part of, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in living prophets and apostles, and there's one of the leads of our church, John Maxwell. He says, the same star that put that star in orbit that was over Bethlehem in celebration of the birth of the babe, the same God that put that star in orbit millennia before it appeared over Bethlehem, that same God's put just as much detail into our human orbits. And if we trust God and we look to him, he will guide us to other people and guide us to the right situations so that we can lead others and we can warm their lives as well and just connect. And I think our connection was one of those human orbits.
Yeah.
And so there was value that I had to offer you. There's value you had to offer me. And it's cool to see how we kept in touch.
Yeah, dude, it's
remotely.
Yeah.
To this point where we can touch base again. And we're still so young, We're 20 years old.
Yeah.
Imagine 10, 20, double our lifetime from now.
I can't,
double our lifetime.
I know. Yeah, but what's interesting is we've been very blessed and fortunate and almost privileged to have the experiences that we have. And so we're definitely going to be talking about that today, becoming a young leader and how important that is, especially in today's society, especially for the next generations, especially for parents. But dude, you're absolutely right. It was totally divine. And these types of relationships at this age, and I don't mean to speak this over anybody, but it's challenging to find. It's not every day that you meet somebody that's, growing in their business, growing in their, overall self-development. Maybe they have a relationship with God, whatever it is. And just because we don't fully agree on faith stuff doesn't mean we can't talk about it and agree on some things, and that's totally fine. And either way, we've added so much value to each other. But these kinds of relationships are everything. And when it comes down to leadership, what we've seen, especially from my experience, so I partially went to college. I've been through the education system. I know you went to high school, no college for you.
I went to high school.
Woo! Yeah, but, and that's enough. But personally, what I've seen is that there is a massive lack of leadership right now for young men and women, especially young men. And that's from school, social media, sometimes it's parenting, from our government and politics, from our fitness and food industry. And really these people's only source of leadership, if their parents aren't that great of an example, is social media. and what social media is saying, oh, hey, you just need to go make a ton of money and ignore your feelings and go buy a bunch of stuff and find value in these little external, shallow things. And I don't mean to speak it over anybody again, but that's kind of where a lot of these young men, especially, that's where they're getting some of their leadership. And I know you were traveling for 2 years serving your mission for your church, and I know you weren't in school or you couldn't even have social media during that time, but a lot has happened. And I think I would just love to interview you today and talk about that, talk about young leadership, how to become a young leader. And you have had some crazy experiences with John Maxwell. Tell us about it.
Well, I guess my experience with John Maxwell began when I asked my dad one night. I remember I was walking up the stairs from our basement, kind of slouched shoulders. This was a while ago. This was back probably my freshman year of high school. I just felt like I had a lot of just hunger inside me, but not something to put into. I wanted to know, what is my avenue? What is my opportunity? What is my calling? And I guess young little me felt a little discouraged. I didn't really know what that was at that age. Mm-hmm. And I asked my dad about this. He walked up the stairs again, kind of shoulders slumped, kind of looking down. He was in the kitchen. I started talking to him. And I asked him, I told him how I felt. What advice do you have for me? And he just said, you might not know what you want to do right now, but until you find out, you should start pouring into yourself. You should start developing yourself. So from that moment on, I opened up my opportunities to being a little more intentional with the things I listened to, or being a little more intentional with the things I read, or being a little more intentional with how my schedule was, or just the time I spent doing things. Ultimately, that led me into reading some of John Maxwell's books. I remember my dad was working with John Maxwell at the time. I didn't know who John Maxwell was.
Yeah.
And he gave me one of his books, and I read it, and I loved it.
Which one?
I believe it was the 15 Valuable Laws of Growth. Actually, no, it was Developing the Leader Within You 2.0.
Dude, that was like the first self-development book I read.
So that was I think that was the first one I read.
Wait, that's the first one I read. So, he has like 80 books, by the way.
And it's so interesting because my dad got to be with John, and then John called me through my dad on the phone. I was freaking out. I got to talk to him, got to connect him over the phone, and then later I got to connect him with him in person. I remember when I saw him walk into the studio because he was recording a podcast in Utah where I live. It was the craziest thing. Like the doors opened and there was light behind him. He was like this dark silhouette. I will never forget it. I was 16, and it's just seeing this. I was like, wow, it's him. And then he comes over to me, and it was actually really incredible. He started to pray over me. He like grabbed my shoulder and like kind of went like this. He like pulled me in. He started to pray. It was a really memorable, very tender experience. So I love John Maxwell. I loved his mission. I love his writing. I love his personality. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, one of the most impactful things that ever happened in my life was this trip I took with him, my dad. So I was 17, had a kind of weird haircut, and I was a total stowaway. I had no business being on this trip at all. John was going to Costa Rica for a country transformation trip.
Yeah, so what does that mean, by the way?
So John Maxwell has these really cool curriculums called roundtables. Now check this out. This is crazy. Apparently, and I hope I'm right on this because this is what I remember, it was something like an unbelievable proportion of people in Costa Rica had actually gone through his roundtables. It was something like 1/3, or at least
of like leadership.
No,
like
of like people? The population.
Oh wow,
that had been touched or involved in these roundtables that he would do. They were just for anyone that taught principle-based leadership. You would have like a little coach and a little round table, and he facilitated this leadership teaching. They teach a value or a principle every week or every month, however often they do it. So he goes to Costa Rica to do this country transformation, brings basically some top leaders, top business leaders, and my dad got to go. And again, I was a total stowaway, and like I'm 17 with a weird haircut.
And how many countries has he done this with?
He's been on invitation to almost every country.
That's insane. That's literally
to do this.
I'm not surprised, and I think he's done hundreds of countries. Like
Yeah.
And what that means is he's like literally visiting their governmental leadership.
So he'll go from like the president, so you're gonna meet the president, mayors, all the way down to just normal people.
And what's funny is I don't think he's met with the US yet. I don't know if they're willing to, or
Yeah,
I don't even know if Joe Biden's conscious enough for it.
Needs some help.
Yeah.
So I go on this trip. I get to be around John. I get to be around these really incredible leaders. But I have this feeling inside me that I want to not just be a spectator and a follower. I want to be a contributor. And if any of you have read John Maxwell's books or been around John Maxwell, one thing that will be indelibly imprinted on your mind and heart is a desire to add value to other people. Even if you don't totally know what that means for you. John indelibly imprinted this question of how can I add value on my mind and heart. And so I remember the first night, we just had finished a meal with John Maxwell, and my dad and I were in the elevator, and I really wanted an answer to this question. And I asked this question to my dad. I said, Dad, how can I add value to John Maxwell? What can I do for him, maybe even for some of these people he's working with? And you know what's funny? My dad told me later, he said, I had a thought that said, Bud, it's John Maxwell. You can't add any value to him. I mean, he's multiple time best-selling author, international speaker. You're 17 years old. Like, just watch what you can, take notes, enjoy the trip. But he didn't say that. That was what he thought. Instead, what he said is, let me think about that. And later he told me, what if you wrote a handwritten note to John? I was like, I mean, I don't have that creative handwriting, but I can do that, right?
Yeah.
And I got these papers. I say papers because I didn't just write a note to John. I wrote a note to his to the CEO of all of his companies, Mark Cole, and I wrote a note to all the people in the group, a personal handwritten note. And I basically just said, these are qualities I've really admired in you. These are things I've learned. I said like 3 things. And it was something very sincere. I really gained a lot of value from these people. And I felt like the value I offered back was appreciation and in the form of a kind of sincere handwritten note. So I did that. Every spare chance I got, I was writing my little note. Every time we paused, I would roll up my phone because I wanted to make sure that the words were right. I didn't want to make any spelling errors. And then the very end of the trip, the very last time John speaks, before he speaks, we're all gathered together in the circle. And he says, my last lesson for you is to be unforgettable. How can you be more unforgettable in your relationships? How can you be more unforgettable in your business? How can you be more unforgettable in your legacy? Be unforgettable. And then he reached into his coat, little suit coat, and he grabbed that note I wrote him.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, like this, Isaac wrote me this handwritten note. That was unforgettable. And he put it back in his suit coat.
Wow. Really? You never told me this.
And so it was an experience for me that, and by the way, I made great connections with many other people on this group. And it was because a 17-year-old with a weird haircut who was a stowaway on this Costa Rica country transformation trip just had a simple question: how can I add value? I think we get really insecure or doubtful about what value we have. And the only thing I would say is you keep moving forward and you keep asking that question, and you just find the smallest way you possibly can to add value. You will add value. It will do more than you think. You'll touch a lot more people than you understand and see. And ultimately, it's going to put you on a path like it put me on a path. And I'm on that path right now. I'm climbing that mountain.
Yeah.
But it's going to put you on a path where you're going to be able to meet a lot of really cool people, and you'll be able to touch a lot of lives in really, really sweet ways.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. And adding value. Well, I was actually going to ask you this, but like, what is leadership to you? And to me, it's adding value to others, whether that be through actual service, whether that be through building them up, teaching them something, whatever we want to call it, you know, but adding value, that is so, so big, especially even in business, where if you have a business or have any intention of being in business or sales, you make money and you scale and you do that through helping people and adding value in some way. So like if I'm a garbage man, I'm adding value to you by taking your garbage out, right? So I'm not labeled as a garbage man. I'm still adding value to you.
And that is also how to be unforgettable.
Yeah.
When value is added to our lives, there's different ways, like you said, but that can create moments that are unforgettable. And that trip is unforgettable for me, and I hope for them as well, because of that simple question.
Yeah. And you differentiated yourself for that because you're there to be like, okay, I'm being served right now. How can I be of service to them? And I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's a great way to start is as becoming a young leader or just a leader in general is ask yourself the question, how can I be of better service to people?
Yep.
And it's not always like when you meet somebody, start giving them advice. Sometimes it's like, hey, tell me more about XYZ, XYZ. Or, hey, I really like your pants. Or, hey, how are you doing today, man?
I think it's an intention and it's an action. It's not always something that's top down. In fact, I think if anything from that story, it was anything but top down.
Yeah.
Right? I had no business experience. I had no professional background. I had no, again, I was a 17-year-old kid.
Mm.
There was no top down, almost like advice giving. It was more just, this is something I can contribute that can make a positive difference in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's cool is you have a ton of experience in leadership. And just to edify you even more, I know you have even more experiences with John Maxwell than, you know, that. I know you have a ton of experience with John Maxwell. And I know you have experience leading others, whether it be in business. I know you've experienced speaking on stage. I mean, we even had a lot of conversations and masterminding stuff. Even in sport, you played sports, right?
A little bit. I did.
Yeah.
I done weightlifting since I was 12. I did football 1 year in high school, and I did jiu-jitsu a little outside high school as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
I did like recreational sports as well.
Yeah.
Lacrosse, basketball.
Yeah. And then you had the privilege of, you know, being able to watch your family build a massive company too and following in those footsteps. Like, it's just amazing. But back to what we were talking about, one thing Dale Carnegie actually says in his book, How Win Friends and Influence People, is everybody in the world is better than you at something. And you can always learn something from somebody. And that whole top-down thing where it's like, oh, I have to, you know, have all this experience and be better to add value, it's not at all true. And sometimes it really is just asking the person how they're doing, or, you know, adding value in some sort of way that's not always just tactical. Sometimes it's more spiritual. And in the spiritual way, we're all on the same level here. We are all on the same level. And in fact, a lot of my personal mentors tell me, because I ask them the same question, like, hey man, how can I add value back to you? And they're like, you already are. Just by being here and being genuinely curious and, you know, actually doing what I tell you.
Well, I think for a mentor to be mentoring someone, value added to that mentor is not the same as the value being from the mentor to the mentee. What I mean by that is the value from the mentor to the mentee is I'm giving you some kind of wisdom or some kind of knowledge. I think from the mentee's perspective, it's what am I doing with that? That's showing I'm honoring it. Mm-hmm. You know what's so interesting? Back to John Maxwell, this is something that will give you a perspective if you feel like you're not. You might have limiting beliefs about your ability to make a positive difference in people's lives. John said, at this point in my life, I'm not looking for gifts. I'm not looking for stuff. Mark Cole, the CEO of all of his companies, says this. The thing that means most to John Maxwell is when someone tells him or shows him what they've done because of his teaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh and gosh. That's very impactful. You think about that from John's perspective. It's not just that John doesn't need. anything necessarily.
Yeah, there's a lot of leaders out there.
He doesn't need a new watch. He doesn't need a new training. But to hear that someone has taken what he shared and made a difference and made a positive impact.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people have been able to work with John Maxwell create more cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So then how should somebody that's young and doesn't really have a lot of leadership experience, but they want to lead in some way in their life, how do you think they should start?
Exactly where they are, with exactly what they have. And you just keep on moving. You keep trying. You keep moving forward. You don't quit. I think I've thought a lot of times that there's just a little bit more I need before I can finally start. And this is something we've talked about a lot off this podcast, but look, I'm on the mountain. I'm climbing the mountain. I'm 20 years old. I'm not here to give any kind of, you do this, you do that. I've kind of made it already for myself. I'm with the people right now climbing the mountain. I'm with those who are saying, how do I do this? I'm with those who are saying, what direction do I take? I'm with those who are saying, I want to be living more than I am, or I want to become more than I am.
Yeah, I think that mindset shift of like, oh, I have to be some like grandiose. It's totally starting where you are. That's huge.
Yeah, and I'm just going. I'm just climbing my mountain, and I'm listening to those who are on the top of the mountain, and they're telling me how great the view is. They're telling me what to look out for, and they're telling me what supplies to bring. And then I'm climbing the mountain, and I've got people like you who are with me, and we're able to support each other because we're on the same basic spot. And then I've got people, Kai.
Yeah, let's talk about the law of thirds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of my mentors in a new business that my dad started in the health and wellness space, his name's Nathan DeTracy. So I've known for, a few years now, which when you're 20, a few years is a pretty good amount of time.
Cool.
And Nate's a really inspiring leader for a lot of reasons. He's ultra disciplined and ultra committed, but it's really his servant leadership and his heart for people that makes him someone that I look up to, and his humility with that. Nate taught me a principle. I'm not sure where he got it from, but it's called Law of Thirds. This has helped me a ton. Basically, the Law of Thirds says this. A third of your time is spent with people who, again, we're using this mountain analogy. I like using this mountain analogy because this is how I view it in my mind. I'm climbing the mountain.
It's great.
A third of your time is spent with people who are ahead of you. Okay? They're trailblazing, or they've known the trail for their whole lives, and they've seen the views. They know what to look out for. Okay? So you've got the people who are ahead of you that you're emulating. The other third is the people that we were talking about who are next to you, who you're running with, right? These are people that are your team. These are people that have the same vision as you, and you're with them. You're locking arms with them.
Yeah,
and then,
like your friends, your peers. Yeah.
And then the third is you a few steps before where you were. People that are a little behind on the trail. Maybe they're just starting. And you get the incredible opportunity of grabbing them or leading them and saying, come with me. You gain new information, you act on it, and then you share it. And that helps you ingrain it to become who you are, and it helps you become. So right now, I'm on the mountain, and I'm becoming. And it's fun and exciting, and I'm learning, and I'm failing fast, but I'm also growing fast. It's really an exciting thing when you start to see it for what it is, which is a wonderful process that we should fall in love with.
Yeah, enjoying the process is huge, and it is a process. And I could tell you millions of times that I failed as a leader, and like where it actually hurt to my core, especially in sports and organizations I'd started. And that failure part is huge. And I think for people that want to become a leader, especially that you're young, understand that failure is part of the process, man. Like, I fail all the time, and I'm just there with you climbing the mountain, man. Like, sometimes it almost feels weird to talk about things or give somebody advice because there's that imposter syndrome. And there's part of me that wants to get rid of that because I know I have credibility in some areas, but I really think failing is extremely important. You fail forward. I mean, that's one of John's books, failing forward and failing fast too, especially as an entrepreneur. Failing fast is really great too because you learn a lot more from your failures than your wins.
So. And I also like to just rephrase them as instead of their failures, they're learning experiences.
Yeah.
So whenever I think about a time where I could have done something better, I think it's a learning experience. That was it. That was helpful. I think, okay, so I learned this.
Yeah.
Next time I'm going to do this better. But yeah, that's the law of thirds is the people you're looking up to, the people you're locking arms with, and the people that you're pouring into ultimately helps you become a better leader.
I love
and
that.
So
yeah,
that's what I'm doing right now. And I encourage wherever you are starting, you do that too. And see how you start to become more than you thought you could.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a great leader is great at showing people their possibilities and what they are truly capable of and stretching their vision. And even sometimes our friends, like you've helped me with that. And I hope I could have done an ounce of that for you. It's just like stretch each other's vision and say, hey, I know you can't see this side of the mountain, but this is freaking awesome. Maybe we should go this way. And another thing I thought of, even on the mountain analogy, and I was on a podcast last week in California, and we were talking about this. We never fail. We only just fall. We only fall a little bit. And getting back up is extremely important, but there's no such thing as failure because all the times that we, quote, fail, we're really just falling and learning from the lesson, especially on the mountain. And the only way we fail is if we quit. So it's only falling. It's not even failing. And that just, I like that. It's funny, we were talking about that and I instantly thought of you. And I was
That's
like,
interesting.
Isaac would like that. But no, we really...
He's like, he would need this.
No. yeah.
Definitely though.
No, we never fail. We only fall. And that's okay. And that's part of the process. I'd be a little worried if you weren't falling, But that brings me back to the law of thirds. That's huge. Having 1/3 of your time with mentors and people above you in the mountain, the other third with people that you're on ground level with, and then, the last third with people that you're bringing up the mountain. I think that's huge. And that brings me to my next question. What are some tactical things that people can do, young people specifically, to start learning about leadership, practicing? And I know you said starting where they are, but
the reason I say that is because you don't know what you don't know. And the only way that's worked for me is to stop overthinking. Because I don't know, guys. I think sometimes I'm an overthinker. I think a lot of times people who know me might agree with this. Sometimes I'm a little bit of an overthinker. And it's funny because you never associate overthinking with positivity. No one ever says we're just overthinking just all these incredible positive thoughts. It's just too much for me. No one says I stay up late at night because I just got too many positive thoughts and it's keeping me awake.
Yeah.
Overthinking means clutter, and clutter is a low state of mind. So stop overthinking. I don't know. It's really hard because there's so many different situations, so many different variables. But the thing that's worked for me the most is just say, what is the best I can do right now? What do I want right now? Just move the best you can forward. And if it's not something you're going to want, you're going to find out quicker by moving forward than just by thinking about it. And then if it is something that resonates with you, it's going to keep resonating with you. And then as you keep moving forward, you're going to get more committed. And then other people are going to see that commitment and it's going to draw them to you.
Yeah, I think like learning to lead yourself first. And like you said, take that leap.
As I look at where I am at a 20-year-old stage of life, and I look at where I was when I was 16, which feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I kept moving forward. I'm just glad I kept reading books. I'm glad I kept applying what I learned in those books. I'm glad I kept trying to associate with the best people I could at the time. I'm glad I tried to be anxiously engaged in a good cause, whatever that good cause was at that time. I'm here in Texas right now because I'm going to a John Gordon event here, and it was so awesome we were able to connect as well. And that was because when I heard John Gordon speak on this Zoom for my dad's company, instead of just listening and doing nothing, I listened, I took notes, and then I found his book and I read his book and I applied what was in the book and I started sharing what was in the book because it was so powerful. And my life's already been changed. My life's already been changing because of what I learned. And one thing led to another, and he invited me out here. And I just was anxiously engaged in a good cause. I just kept moving forward. I did the best with the good I knew. And I knew my best. I just kept acting. And you just gotta trust that God's got a bigger plan for your life. But you have to be willing to move the wheel. You also have to be willing to act on what he's already given you so that he can give you more.
Yeah.
It's a line upon line kind of understanding. That's how my story is going to play out. That's how it's played out. Is not going to be this overnight, oh, it's going to be now like little by little, connection by connection, win by win, learn by learn, and then you see where it takes you. Yeah. You trust that God's got a bigger plan for you, and that as you keep acting on the most good, the best thing that you have in your life, if you keep acting on that, he will guide you to better things.
Absolutely. And one thing I've talked about all the time, especially within our refounders movement and community, is we were not created to play small. We were created to take action, and we were created to do something big, whatever that means to us. And, we were called according to a bigger purpose, and part of that purpose is taking action. And I think in these growth processes, a lot of people, because of social media and because of, school, we get caught in what's called motion, where it's like, okay, reading books is a great start. Listening to this podcast is a great start. But really what that is that's motion, and there's a little bit of growth there. You're kind of like running on the treadmill, but movement is when you're taking actual action.
I like that. Motion versus movement. I like that.
Motion versus movement. Like this right now, like our conversations and you teaching me something, me, sharing something with you, that's movement. Or like what I'm speaking on a stage, like that's movement. Or when I'm calling somebody that works with me and I'm like, hey man, I really think we should get this done. That's a movement because I'm literally practicing leadership and I'm getting those reps in, right?
I love that. And I want to share one more thing.
Yeah.
Along the lines of tactical advice, I hope I'm not falling flat on this advice because it's really just what's worked for me. But I want to share one small story that also could illustrate this point I'm really trying to make. My dad, when he had me, lived in a tiny, very old house in Salt Lake City, Utah, in a very low-income neighborhood. This is when he just had me. He's married, young, newly married, has me. He's a big dreamer. He's a hard worker, and you bet he's got what it takes to succeed. But he has this, where's my opportunity? How do I get more opportunity? Where do I need to go? And he calls his dad, my grandpa, and this is what my grandpa tells him. Bloom where you're planted. So that's the most simple way. I needed to just get it all out.
Yeah.
That's the most simple way I could say it. Bloom where you're planted, because when you bloom where you're planted, you start to see new things. You start to see other opportunities. And then when the other opportunity comes, you're more ready for it. You do the best of what you got right now. And so this is what my dad did. He bloomed where he was planted. And then he got another opportunity. And he bloomed where he was planted. By the way, we're not talking like opportunity like, yeah, he like worked at pizza place. And then next thing you know, he's speaking on a stage. No, like he bloomed where he's planted, got the reps in, like you were saying. And then you got the second opportunity to opportunity, bloom where you're planted, bloom where you're planted, excellence, to where now he's, founded companies and built companies with billions of dollars in revenue, changed and impacted thousands of people's lives. And most impactful to me of what he's done is he's made an unforgettable impact in who I am. And he's pathed a path of leadership and example and integrity and faith and love for me to emulate.
Yeah. What's that been like growing up with parents that are practicing great leadership? And of course, they've done a great job with you. They did a great job with Isaac.
I'm going to take a moment to, this might be just so like totally irrelevant to everyone listening, but I'm going to take a moment to just highlight why my parents did something right or how my parents did something right. My mom is someone that at her heart and at her soul is so strong and has such an ability to persist through difficulty and endure, and has such a just this inner strength and this inner loyalty. And I would describe her as someone that's fierce and intense, yet she is someone that never wants spotlight, never ever ever wants to speak on a stage, is incredibly loving, the most charitable person I've ever known, and extremely encouraging, loves her role as a mother more than anything else, which is exactly what I want to find in a wife. Is someone that loves being a mother, not like puts up with it or, oh, it's nice. Like, no, like my mom doesn't want to go on a vacation with the girls. And if that's what you do, that's what you do. It's no worries. But she loved us, and that was her mission, is to be a mother.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Lincoln said, everything I am and everything I hope to be, I love my darling mother. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah, it's so awesome.
Now my dad, again, very strong. I would say everything I said about my mom to my dad, except, well, nothing except they just have different kind of roles, I guess. My dad's just as loving and just as fierce and just as intense. My dad, though, is very ambitious when it comes to creating economic opportunity for others, when it comes to helping others see more potential in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a driver for him his whole life. But as a father, he was so anxiously engaged in his business, calling all the time, meetings. There was many times in my childhood when he just had to travel a lot to speak around the world. But my dad was so good at being intentional with whatever time he had, he would spend it with us. He would take me on little one-on-one dates to go watch a movie at the movie theater or go get ice cream. Even if it was just getting ice cream, even if it was just a drive, or he would just wrestle with me, or he'd go lift with me, or he'd take me out in the desert, in the middle of the desert, and go catch lizards. What the heck?
Yeah.
And you gotta understand, like, I love that, but we're talking about like a, 30, 40-year-old man just with his kid. He's just like, okay, let's go in the middle of nowhere and go catch lizards. Like, he did that, and those experiences of him just pouring into me and spending time with me and showing me he loved me and cared about me, I will forever be indebted for that.
That's amazing. Well, it's like when he's with you, he's with you.
When he's with me, he's with me. And he was with me often because the truth is, even as busy as he is and still is, he does make the time.
You know what's so cool? Since you being here and staying in my home and everything, he's called you every day. Mind you, he's in the middle of building a massive organization with 40,000 brand new members over the past maybe like a couple months.
We're talking less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months. 40,000 people, and he's the founder.
Or just over 2 months.
Your dad is the founder and CEO of this company, and he's built multiple other companies, and he still is intentional with his time with you. And I'm like listening to the phone call. He's present with you. And one thing Andy Elliott talks about is if you are busy and you do have kids, be where your feet are. If you're working, you're working. And think about work. But when you're with family, be with your family.
And my mom's the same way. Like, she's sending me little messages always and just saying,
so cool.
Good job. And like,
yeah,
I'm just telling you guys what.
It's a blessing.
That's,
But
let's go make such an impact with our generation that we can have parents like that for these souls that are yet unborn that will come into this world. Because I'm telling you what, if one family, just one, my family, could do what they did for me, that impact cannot be limited.
Yeah. It takes one person. It takes one family. And I do believe that leadership starts in the home. Leadership definitely starts in the home.
My dad understood, and my mom understood this, that no success, no accolades or prestige or money could ever compensate or make up for or justify not making your family the absolute number one most important priority in your life, second only to your relationship with God. That is why I want to share what my parents have added to me, so that hopefully it can be duplicated.
Yeah.
Maybe in an early stage of our meeting our like age group's lives.
Yeah. So this is exactly what it means to refound the next generations. And we say this all the time. It really does start with the parents. And if you're listening to this and you didn't really have parents like that growing up, or those same opportunities or guidance, mentorship, whatever, you can be that for your own family. And you can be the one, your dad's book, for your own family. And there are leaders out there that are willing to help you. There is opportunity out there. And what you said about blooming where you're planted, love that. When you change your perception of, okay, well, where I'm at now, let me start looking for leadership opportunities, how I should get better.
Just start bloom where you're planted.
Yeah, start looking for things now. Like if you're in high school, like there were not a lot of leadership opportunities. So you know what I did? I started my own club, and it was called the Leadership and Self-Development Club. And we had 50 high schoolers join within the first couple of weeks. 50.
You want an invitation? Go read John Maxwell's Intentional Living. He talks about how to live a life of significance and how to start small.
Yeah.
I'm reading it right now, I think for the second time. I think I read it before my mission, but I want to read it again just to re-implement the principles. That could add a lot of value to your life if you're really wondering, how do I get started?
Yeah, I think that's a really great entry level, like books. Books are great. Any of John Maxwell's books, that's a really good one. Oh my gosh. I think How to Develop the Leader Within You 2.0 is also great. I mean, it's funny that we both started there. But I also think, and you've read this for sure, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I mentioned it earlier, but just teaching you how to get better with people, build better relationships. And it talks about leadership in the book too, but that's a great place to start. But dude, what you said about blooming where you're planted, that's huge, because there are people that sometimes they might not even be old enough to, start a business or step into those roles, but you can find something, whether it be in your own personal life, whether it be with your friends. And that doesn't mean go and start giving your friends advice. One of the things we talk about is earning the right with people.
And I think
there are ways.
And I think it's like, I feel a lot more free that I don't feel like I have to be someone that gives people advice.
Yeah.
I'm someone that loves people, and I add value where I can, and I serve where I can, make a difference where I can, and then I'm gonna keep doing that until it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just the example we set. I think the example is huge too. And you set such a great example. And you're the oldest of four. Wow. So awesome. And you have a good relationship with them.
They're
so cool.
It's been great to reconnect with them after I got over my mission. And
yeah,
I don't know. My family is, I feel like I have a very rare family because we all genuinely love each other.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's gotten a little bit harder for people nowadays. 50% of marriages end in divorce and all this stuff. But yeah, absolutely. So awesome. Well, last question. Again, back to the young leadership. What advice would you have growing up in your leadership experience? And I don't even want to speak on this. I want to hear more about you. What advice would you have for people out there that want to become leaders, young or not, whatever, but there's all this noise going on and there's a lot of distraction and there's a lot of, half-assed advice almost, social media, whatever. What advice do you have for people muting the noise and focusing in? Maybe it's finding a mentor, but focusing in on what's really intentional for my leadership growth.
John Maxwell asks the question, why do you want to be a leader?
More John Maxwell.
Why do you want to be a leader?
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. Assuming you're okay with the knowledge and truth that being a leader is not getting the parking spot close to the door, or being a leader is not being lifted up on the chair. Leadership is being the hero, and hero, it comes from the Latin root servo. I hope I'm getting this right. And servo means servant. So the one who's the hero and the one who leads is the servant that serves all. I started because I surround myself with people, and I was given people, right, that I didn't necessarily intend. Like my dad, for example. My dad was my dad. I surround myself with people who believed in me. I surround myself with people who saw more than I could see, who knew more than I knew, that had more love and vision than I did. And I just kept listening to them, and I kept following their advice.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately led me to where I am now, and it's going to lead me to where I'm going to go.
Such a study. You gave a little speech today.
So if you're wondering how do I become a leader? Well, leadership's influence, nothing more, nothing less.
Say that again?
Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less.
Yeah.
If you're taking a walk and no one's following you, you're taking a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Start by reading one of John Maxwell's books. Why don't you just apply what he says and see what happens? Again, bloom you're planted.
Yeah.
And you're going to start to gain this excitement. You're going to start to gain this confidence. And you're going to start to gain this momentum. And people are going to see that. And you're going to start influencing people.
Absolutely. And I want to say something for the listeners, for those of you that have, stuck with us this far, good for you. But number 2 is, notice how we have never in this entire episode once talked about titles or talked about, labels or trophies or achievements or fame or monetary or materialistic goals of leadership. That has nothing to do with it, and that's simply a byproduct. If anything, that's level 1. I don't know if you've read John Maxwell's 5 Levels of Leadership. That one's really good.
Position.
Yeah, I forget the order, but number 1 is position. 90%, he says, of leadership in the world is based off of position. Oh, they were just put there, and so now they lead. And then the pinnacle of that, level 5, is people follow you because of who you are and because of how you add value to them and how you lead them and how you're of service to them. And one thing I don't know where this is from, but it was like, sometimes good leaders finish last, and they let the team go before them. And one thing Maxwell says, that is Simon Sinek, yeah. So one thing Maxwell says, we were just talking about Maxwell, bro.
Maxwell podcast.
Yeah, we gotta have him on the podcast. But one thing he says is like, I want you to stand on my shoulders and build you up and lift you up. Don't worry about me. Just stand on my shoulders, and then they will do the same. And instead of this pyramid of like, everybody's at the bottom and then it gets up to the leader. No. The leader's at the bottom holding everybody's weight, and everybody's built up from there. And I think that's extremely powerful, especially for young leaders. If you're going to get one thing right, get this right. It's about service. It's about adding value to others, and understand that you're here to impact and have a significant change or significant impact and positive change to other people. It's not about titles, not about money, not about fame. It's not about the suits and ties, which are dope. It's about loving and adding value to others.
I want to show one last thing.
Yeah.
Love casts out fear. I wonder if the question of how do I be a leader sometimes comes from a place of fear. My friend, perfect love casts out fear. Love where you're at. Also love that you're learning. Love that you're moving forward. Love the hard parts. They make you stronger. Love the success. It feels great. Love the people you get to meet. Love the times you get to know them. Love. Just start loving the process. Start falling in love with what you're doing. Love the process. And John Gordon says, if you love the process, you love what the process produces.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. This is so good. This was so good. So 3 books I think we should talk about really quick. We don't even have to talk about it, just say, because we're finishing up. 3 books. Number 1 Intentional Living by John Maxwell. Number 2, How to Develop the Leader Within You 2.0 by John Maxwell. And then number 3, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, I think. And I'm sure you agree. Those 3 books are catalysts to growing your leadership and great first steps, I believe.
Yep.
John Maxwell has his own podcast. I mean, you can find that stuff everywhere. But yeah, being super intentional about like, okay, where am I getting my advice from? Bloom where I'm planted, changing my perception, looking for opportunity, and leading with love. Dude, that's fire. That is so good. And you guys, if you want to get more connected with Isaac's social medias, what he's doing in business, great company that him and his father founded it, but Isaac's doing his own thing within it. Make Wellness. It's actually about peptides. And I actually have my own episode about peptides coming out soon. Really good. Peptides changed my life, ironically. But if you want to check out his stuff, just look up Isaac Justin Prince on most platforms. I think it's IJ Prince on Instagram. And Isaac's dad's name is Justin Prince. And you'll see a lot of his stuff. He's got his own podcast, book, speaker, freaking beast, dude. So, but much love. And if you guys are actually looking for specific mentorship, specific value, we have a community and movement called Refounders where we actually provide that mentorship, that leadership, connected businesses, our entire network of young entrepreneurs, whole 9 yards. That's on all of our platforms. If you just look up Refounders anywhere, that's a resource for you. So
thanks so much, Kai.
Dude, it's been an honor, man. You've changed my life. So grateful for you. Thank you for being such a great friend and being willing to lock arms with someone like me who's in this struggle too.
Climbing the mountain.
They were climbing. We were freaking climbing the mountain.
Love climbing the mountain. The view is beautiful, but so is the process.